Hi, this is Carol from True to Scale. Today we're going to build this quarter scale or 1/48 potting bench. This sample has been landscaped. It also includes a little hedgehog, but your kit includes everything else that you see. Now we're going to start with the wood motherboard and you'll see the countertop. You'll want to cut that out. Find the wire and the little brad. This is going to become your faucet and the knob for your sink. Just go ahead and dry fit those pieces into place to make sure that they fit accordingly. If not, you may need to use an X-Acto knife to just make the hole slightly bigger. Next, take some round tip pliers, bend over your wire to create a faucet shape, and of course you'll trim it with your wire cutters. Brad should also be cut with your wire cutters. Next, we'll dry fit the 3D printed sink into the hole in the countertop. The sink will protrude slightly above the countertop to give a little dimension. If you would like your sink to sit flush with the countertop, sand the opening until your sink sits nicely down into the hole. The assembly process, the basic tools I like to use are a needle tool, Elmer's wood glue, a little dish for the glue, and a gluing jig so I can get my corners nice and square. I'm working with Elmer's glue and my needle tool. However, a toothpick would work just as well as the needle tool. I'm putting the countertop into place, and next I'm going to put the bottom shelf into place. I'm careful that I don't apply too much glue, just tiny dots. And this is the top shelf that goes underneath the stained glass window. I'm using the other end of my needle tool to clean off the excess glue from the joints. The sides are then glued into place. These sides would also make cute doors, so just add a little doorknob, maybe even a couple of little hinges to look like a shabby chic style potting bench. I'm careful not to add too much glue. Making sure that I get all of the little areas that will be touching. I'm going to stick this in my gluing jig just to make sure that everything is at 90-degree angles and lining up properly. Using my X-Acto knife, I'm going to trim the little tabs on these three pieces. These are the brace, the front gable, and the front gable trim. I'm going to go ahead and glue the brace into place in that little hole in the back. Before the glue dries, I'm going to add the front gable and glue it to the sides and to the brace. I've already noted where the sides are going to touch the front gable, so I know where to put the glue. Now if I turn it over, I can make sure that everything is lined up flush with the front of the potting bench. The next thing to be glued into place is the front gable trim. I want to make sure that it aligns perfectly with the gable piece behind it. I'm going to cut out and glue on the apron to the front edge of the counter. I'm going to paint my potting bench with a light ivory acrylic paint, but other colors that would complement potting bench is a turquoisey green color, a light pink color, and for a more modern look, a gray wash, maybe using something like a slate gray paint. I'm going to use the 1/4 angle brush, but a number 8 shader would also work well. The slats and the stained glass window frame each get a coat of paint. I'm giving a very light, almost dry coat on each side of the motherboard. I'm being very careful not to put too much paint on because the motherboard can warp with these tiny little pieces. I've cut the slats out of my motherboard with an X-Acto knife, and I'm going to go ahead and glue them into place, starting with the end ones. That helps me to position them equidistant from each other. So you can see I put the first one just off center of the peak, and I'm going to the end of the roof and I'm placing the last slat, and now I'm putting the middle slat into place. And I'll repeat for the second side. When I'm teaching workshops, one of the questions I get often asked is, why do you use wood glue versus tacky glue? Well, when putting furniture together, I like using wood glue because it makes sturdy joints. Tacky glue, although great for flowers and fabric, is not great for making furniture and structures when you want solid joints, because after the glue dries, it will be somewhat flexible. I'm giving my potting bench a coat of light ivory paint, being careful not to put too much paint into the engraved lines. I can remove it with my X-Acto knife if I need to. Just an all-over light coat. I might decide to come back with a second coat and then sand back along the edges to give it a little bit of a weathered look. To add more weathering and aging, you can always go over your finished potting bench with a rag that has been dipped in some stain. I'm ready to transfer the graphics that go on the side of the potting bench. I'm going to use Mod Podge Matte, or Matte Medium also works. So I went ahead and cut out the chicken artwork right up to the black edges. And I'm applying a thick layer of the matte medium or the matte Mod Podge, making sure that there aren't any air bubbles. If there's air bubbles, that will show after I take off the paper. So I just put it right on top of the engraved lines and make sure that it has a nice flat seal. It's important to let this dry a long time, so I'll either let it sit overnight or use a hair dryer. I'd like to show you a couple of ways I like to make stained glass. You can see the before and the after. The texture is quite remarkable. It really adds to the dimension and realism. Texture can be made with a satin or gloss acrylic varnish. Another way is to use embossing powders. This is a clear embossing ink. I just dip the stained glass in, pour the powder on, and heat it with the embossing tool. An easier way is to use a gloss medium varnish like this. I just dab it on with a paintbrush very thick. As you can see, I'm giving it a lot of texture, and I allow it to dry or use a hair dryer until it turns clear. I'm ready to paint my 3D printed sink and watering can. I've mixed a black and a dark gray together. I'm looking to replicate that really dark color spatterware that I remember my grandmother using. To achieve the light color specks in the spatterware, I've taken a really old paintbrush and cut the ends of the bristles off so they're frayed and pretty nasty. And I just pick up a little bit of paint and kind of dry brush little splatters on. And now I'm going overboard with this, as you can see. So I'm going to take it back with some dark gray and give it some random strokes here and there. The result is fairly mottled looking appearance that gives us the idea of spatterware. And I'll finish it with a satin acrylic varnish. I've glued the stained glass window and the stained glass window frame into place, and now I'm gluing the faucet and the knob into place and the sink. We've come to my favorite part of the project, which is revealing the transferred artwork. I'm dabbing on some water to soak into the paper, using plenty of water. And this is just plain clear water. And I'll carefully, gently rub in a circular motion with my paintbrush. I'm not putting any pressure on the bristles at all. I want to make sure that the paper lifts off without lifting off the artwork. You can see that the paper is just balling up and falling away. Add a little more water, let it soak in, and do the other side. Again, gentle, circular brush strokes. And it takes a couple of minutes for this to work, so don't be in a hurry and just enjoy the process. Now if I let this dry back, some of the white edges might show where the paper didn't rub off entirely. I can just re-wet that area and rub again. I'm using a very simple method for making curtains for the potting bench. And this method is possible when using a very, very thin cotton or natural fabric. You can see where the curtain is going to go. So I take some sharp tweezers and I'm going to fold the curtain 3 times, accordion fold 3 times, to make 4 panels. I'm making nice tight folds, and the tweezers really help a lot here. I'm using Aleene's original tacky glue in the gold bottle, but you can use any fabric safe tacky glue. And it takes a little while to position the curtain exactly how I want it, but the tacky glue is forgiving. It gives me a little while to work with it. My needle tool comes in handy for reaching back behind the curtains and pushing the folds where I want them. Notice how I am peeling the plastic backing off of the fabric. This is really a no-fuss method of making tiny curtains. I'm going to put the runner down on the bottom shelf, but you could use it in other parts of the potting bench. For example, it could be a cute towel draped over the edge of the bench, or it could be cut into tiny triangles and make a pennant banner. I'm going to paint my 3D printed accessories with a base coat of light green. This really helps me to see the details of all the little succulents, so I can go back over with a second coat and paint them individually. I'm painting both the tops and bottoms of these because light does go through these translucent 3D printed pieces. So I want to block that light, make it opaque. This is just a single, even coat and not too thick. I'll let it dry completely. I'm using these locking tweezers to hold the pieces while I paint them. I've cut apart the sprues to make it a little bit easier. My first coat is very dry now, and I'm using a smaller detail brush to go in and paint the individual succulents. I'm using various shades of light pink, light bluish gray, a nice bright chartreuse green, some light ivory, and a maroon color. I've used the succulents on my front porch as inspiration for my colors. And I am mixing the various shades. What really adds realism to these 3D printed succulents is painting them with different shades of color. I'm just adding color upon color now. I like to add the dark maroon burgundy color at the very tips of some of the succulents. This helps to bring out the different leaves. These sprue cutters come in really handy to make flush cuts with my 3D printed pieces. They're available from Amazon.com and Micromark.com. I'm going to transform these cardstock tools into realistic garden tools. So I'm taking a nail file and just carefully sanding a little bit of wood grain into the wood areas of the tools. Now I'm going to use this marker, which is a nice caramel color, kind of like an oak color, and I'm coloring the handles. And a metallic silver Sharpie, I'm going over the metal areas of the tools. I'm going to carefully cut these tools out using the X-Acto knife. They're tiny little tabs that I'm just clipping with my X-Acto knife. Turn it over and do the same on both sides. Now I'll use a mouse pad and a ball stylus tool to shape these garden tools. I just gently press down on areas that I want to curve. I'll turn the tool over and gently press down on the back of the handle to give it the opposite curve. Now it's finally time to put the scene together. I'm going to place these plates, which I've also used the ball stylus tool on, and given a coat of satin acrylic varnish to them. The little teacup, which I've painted with a little tiny flower on it. our pots of succulents, which we've painted, and a couple of the seed packets, which have been included in the kit. These are just fun little put-about items to really add a lot of detail to the scene. And our tiny little watering can is just perfect. And there you have it. Your little potting bench is all done. Thank you for joining me in this workshop. I hope that you have fun creating your own little quarter scale potting bench.